Alrighty, folks. Welcome back, everyone. 皆さん、おかえりなさい。今日は404日目です。This is day 404. We got some stuff. As you can see, I was buying my time today. We started with Boom Pro, but then we had a great discussion with Protocol as per our usual weekend ritual nowadays. So that's kind of lovely. We are somewhat behind schedule, but we have become quite flexible as of late. There's also a P5X Valentine's Day update. Later this evening, happy Valentine's Day to everyone. It is officially local time. Valentine's Day, February 14th, 38 minutes after midnight. Hopefully everyone is having their thing. Very I'm looking forward to looking at E5X's representation of your foreigner, like kind of foreigner friendly generalization of the ritual that is Valentine's Day. And it's that the ritualistic Valentine's Day as typically shown or depicted to a foreigner is high school context, but there might be a little bit of a wrinkle because there might be other representations, because P5X actually has other characters that aren't in school, so older and vocational places. So I'm kind of curious how much of them going to depict it, and well, I'll provide commentary on that, obviously. You would really like to have a Valentine's? Can I relate? You would really like to have a Valentine's? I don't know. I've had Valentine's before. Yes and no. I'm actually kind of curious. Hold up. I don't want to dox myself, but so Valentine's, like the literal Valentine's idea of Valentine's, is not exchanged very similarly anymore. For I guess for my modern life, usually people just wish each other Valentine's in some sort of digital way. You do have a guaranteed way to have a Valentine's? Oh yeah? How's that go? Alright, and I'll do this while we're going. But this shouldn't take too long. So we have like 2 stacks, and then when I refresh, there we go. There's 141. So we're gonna do those things. If you have money and know some dodgy streets, oh god, please. Actually, I don't know if you're aware of this, and I'm not sure, like, I'm gonna take this with a grain of salt and foreigners leniency, but in Japan, you can have a temporary Valentine's. So you don't have to be a dodgy street. It's actually a fairly common practice to pay for companionship. And hear me out, that's more of a cultural sensitivity thing. It's a practice that does happen, where like you can, on Christmas Day and stuff, you can find companionship in that way. So there are countries that it's very difficult to find time for one's own like personal upkeep and whatnot. And then during holidays, it is customary and standard expectation to spend time with the company of others. So you can actually, have money and do that normally, or like kind of like almost socially expected. I was going to talk about that, and I'm curious if there's allusions to that in P5X, because that is actually a thing. Not in. I'm not sure what the word on the street is in the United States or in various states or whatnot, but we're not talking about that type of thing. We're not talking about like. I specifically do mean companionship, like the act of finding companionship. That's in the United States. I like. Let's do a little generalization. Procol, you and I had talked about pubs, right? Like local watering holes. And I think that's kind of, if you have money, go to a local watering hole and you might be able to find companionship in that momentary like exchange. But this is a little bit more than that, I suppose, in Japan. Things like rental families and whatnot do come as a practice. Like surrogacy for temporary companionship, or the idea of trying to uphold status opinions and then feeling good about oneself, right? At least momentarily. Very real thing. No dodgy streets involved. Actually, a lot of them are organizational. They're like institutionalized, actually. Oh, that's an interesting thought. And my my feelings about that, like when someone asks, well, that sounds like that's kind of weird, like paying someone for companionship. It's like, well, I do it for free. I mean, is it because it's free that makes it more dodgy or not dodgy? Like cultural, I'm trying to like be a little bit culturally I'm riffing off of cultural expectations. Like, so what do you get for free? Friends? Family? Like, so whenever you ask, like, would I really like to have a Valentine's? Can I relate? This is going to come from sounding like I'm taking something for granted, but I'm gonna say this with the utmost appreciation. I don't think I really like to have a Valentine's. I think I have lots of loving people around in my life that I don't usually pine or believe that I require or like have a desire for Valentine's. It would be nice if I was privileged and be offered the opportunity to have Valentine's. That's something I would take with open arms and a happy smile. However, when I think about things I really like, I don't necessarily think that I have a shortage of human connection and willingness for companionship. In fact, sometimes I'm all too familiar with unrequited and unreciprocated interest in others. Like, cue the Japanese drama situation, right? Like the Japanese rom-com will use Japanese culture for this very purpose. The idea like unrequited love, right? Or one-sided love situation. It becomes very different when you simply want other people to be happy. So when it comes to Valentine's, I understand that Valentine's Day is heavily commercialized from the United States perspective, and in a way, when some people say that, they think about the lack of money, the corporate greed and all that stuff, but I think of it as a really funny way to tell people, hey, at least spend money on each other. And I understand that the reason why I paid that disclaimer is there's a bit of a privilege and luck involved in that. I think it is when you say you would really like to have a Valentine's and then you combined it with a guaranteed way to have Valentine's by having money, I like spending money on people that I know well enough that they don't misinterpret the intent, because watching people be happy is what I kind of think the whole balance between commercializing Valentine's Day and what money can bring. money can bring that momentary feeling of catharsis. Obviously, whenever someone takes something for granted, for example, so to contrast it with why I don't think what I'm saying is being too privileged, is the idea that I don't think people even get that most of the time. That's why I brought up the Japanese thing. I think people don't even give themselves that chance to be happy in a moment's time. So when I think of Valentine's Day, that's kind of what I think about. So if I worked in a place like now, right? Like if I am employed in a place, I would be the guy who basically would find a euphemism specifically for contrast. I would go to the grocery store. I would have a reason to buy like 10 boxes of chocolate, bring it to work, and give everyone a box of chocolate. So then we go back to the original question about, would I really like to have a Valentine's? I don't need to wait for someone to be my Valentine's. I prefer to be the Valentine. So like, and this is non-indiscriminate. I'm not talking about intimacy or anything like that. I'm talking about platonic sharing of love. So workplaces filled with stress, sucky times, and if anyone's at work during Valentine's Day, they probably would like to have a Valentine's, whether that's like a bromance or a platonic thing or like, you know, a heterosexual relationship, etc. I hope that I am able to give people something, even if it's some chocolate with some money, that gives them even a momentary break from that. I think that's what brings great joy to me. So if I do receive that and reciprocate it sometime down the road or something like that, that's absolutely phenomenal. But yeah, I don't really think about it. I think sometimes when people say they don't really think about things, it's like, oh, it's easy for you to say because you have those things. It's like, I don't have a significant other. Actually, the last time I did anything Valentine's related, I don't remember when was the last time I did anything Valentine related. Maybe high school? That was like 20 years ago. So the reality is I can't take something for granted if I don't usually have it. However, I like to still show my appreciation of what it can be able to do, right? To keep it in touch. It's not to write off not knowing that other people may desire it, right? This is a great Valentine's. Like, wishing people a happy Valentine's Day is great. That's like, that's one of your privileges. Although I do have to admit though, since we're talking, is that assuming you don't have a Valentine's pro call? What were you doing on Valentine's Day, huh? Pro call? Not those dodgy streets are we talking about now? Alright, let's get into this stuff. Hopefully. Good. Label. Okay. Class. Ichi. I get this blanketed response a lot. Whenever someone asks me, do I want something? Like, do I like something, or, you know, something I desire? I'm kind of a very desireless kind of person. And that has become a problem a lot when it comes to having like close relationships with people. Because it also leaves no room to be satisfied, or no room for someone to reciprocate and want to give something, because I rarely ever ask for anything. And It's crazy to think about, but this is and continue to be an open problem that my best friends and I talk about. Like an unexpected problem where when you have people who care about you, they legitimately feel guilt or like have issues about always taking when you're sharing it with some empathetic people, right? And that goes both ways. Like when I meet someone and they rarely ever request anything, then I'm less and less involved in their life, right? So it's one of the quintessential paradox of like independent empathizing people, where you enter this situation where it feels it's a detached relationship because one, both are incredibly independent, and then two, if they're empathetic, they usually are more engaged in interest when there is a source that demands their attention. However, when it comes to like forming long-standing partnership and whatnot, you have to negotiate when to feel comfortable asking for things or like going out of your way to do things. And that romanticism, I almost want to say it's uncharacteristic of like Asian cultures in general. Like asking for things is different than knowing what to do, right? Like because of the monocultural homogeneity, strong homogeneity of dominant like patriarchal values and matriarchal values and whatnot, you don't have to approach those questions like, hey, do you want chocolate for Valentine's? Men buy chocolates for their significant other or people they like, or like no, in certain places, and then women do the other way. Like in Japan, like in school, for example, women give chocolate to men. So like the idea is that these questions don't typically come up, and it doesn't come up in like Chinese backgrounds often too. Like there's a rule and there's a homogeneity on it. So whenever it's asked as a question, like in Western society, like Western, where there's a choice, right? Like, do you want one? Do they want one? Oh, sometimes I don't. Like, it's more like this is a tradition, so you do it. Like Lunar New Year. Whether you want or do not want or do something, you simply do it because it's adherent to tradition. And Valentine's, that's what I meant by reading on Japanese Valentine's. It's interesting because the majority do it largely because they don't have to ask or not ask. And whenever I occasionally get those questions, I often think to myself, like, you know what? I think the most straightforward answer is I don't think about it. The more and more you listen, the less and less guilty you feel for the time you take away from studies. I guess that's a working trade-off, huh, Procon? It's Valentine's Day. We gotta live it up. Hopefully I think it's really cute to watch. So I like watching Valentine's Day things because it's kind of cute to watch people share their PSA, their public show of affection, honestly, like in the westernized world. In the westernized world, I don't think it's cringy. I think it's brilliant. And it's because, and one of the major reasons why I think it's brilliant and not cringy is because it's such a startling contrast between cultures. Like, public show of affection is incredibly like questionable, and you know, we're gonna use the word progressive. And the reason why I'm using the word progressive is because some of that does exist now in like Japan and possibly China and whatnot, but that is not the social norm. Public show of affection. So in the net world, the internet world, um, the only way I would experience Valentine's or like vicariously understand how Valentine's are, or like get in touch with the Gen Z crew, is embracing and participating in the Gen Z thing, which is spectating other people's demonstration of affection. There's some wild ones. I mean, hear me out. To relate to the 67 thing, I'm sure there's some couple out there now, your little bouncy new Gen Z couples doing like a 67 themed thing to show how they're like connected at the hip with their 67 interpretations or something like that. And it's not cringe for the sake of human connection. I don't think, like, it's very difficult for me to ever view two people, a group of people trying to come together and relate and communicate to each other as anything, as pretty much anything but cringy. So, I mean, in a way, you could kind of say I'm a bit of a romantic, ironically, in that sense, where if it's ever an attempt to form connections between two human beings, really there is very few things I've ever find cringy, because it's entirely sweet. It's incredibly unnecessary, like it's unparalleledly sweet, the lengths people will try to go to, at least in my opinion, like mentally, like trying to overcome hurdles to connect with each other. I'm sweet. Well, I am pulling in the sugar right now. I think that's my association with Valentine's. Whenever someone says like, oh, we're sitting around, and then it's like, man, bachelors forever, guys, right? It's like, why don't we just go and bowl some games, or go and hit the arcades or something. Human connection. I don't imagine this is how people think about Valentine's, but that's perfectly all right. I once sat down and listened to someone for 3 hours to as they tried to gaslight me about the corporate greed, and that Valentine's was a construction of West right-wing capitalism as a way to tax the insecure people who are holding on to their tenuous, cynical, slightly negligent ways of human emotion and intimacy, or something like that. The person was really like not having a good time, so we sat down and listened to the person's story. That the person was very unhappy. They had, like, they broke up, like there was a breakup a little bit before. That person didn't sound that elegant. It was more like yelling and swearing and being very unhappy with someone who they decide to break up like right before Valentine's Day, or on Valentine's Day, sort of. Yeah, you do hear a lot of that. I often thought, like, if I could be like a mixologist or something, like I think being a bartender would be like something that could give my life some really lively floral notes when it comes to these things, because in most cases the anecdote that I'm sharing non-specifically, that usually happens around a bar. Like, what I mean is, I happen to be the company in a bar situation when someone talks about their like regrets and their remorse and how they acted, or what could have been, and ifs and thens about relationships. I'm trying to sound as deadpan as possible for the discretion of the person. So I'm not gonna like talk about the details of the nature of it, who's wrong, who's right. Typically, both a breakup means that two humans lose. So regardless of who's right or who's wrong, there's a loss at both ends. I like to think there's a mutual sense of loss, right? In both good and bad. Loss is part of the whole living humans and interacting with humans. As much as there are good, there's our bad experiences.
Shokun.
Shokun. Speaking of Shokun, this means gentleman. If there's anything I think if there's anything I would say I'm fairly conservative in saying comfortably is that I think I'm fairly good 9 out of 10 times at being a gentleman. And that's in both possibly the chauvinistic way or chivalrous way, and as well as the feminine way, right? In both cases, I think I'm able to oblige. If one wants to talk about feelings, by all means. If one wants to bro it up, by all means, we can do that. My life has given me enough experience to do both, and most of the things in between. Okay, we want to spill the beans, spill the tea over a pint or two. That's perfectly fine. I have been privileged to have the opportunity to be a secret keeper of many, many things. And a gentle man, but never a gentleman. All right, I see what you did. Yeah, I wouldn't know, actually. Yeah, I wouldn't know.
Shintaku.
Intaku. Speaking of this, Shintaku is trust, by the way. If you're wondering how this connects to the vocabulary, a lot of this vocabulary is kind of like, I'm kind of riffing off of some of this vocabulary right now. This one would deal with the this character, right? This word would deal with the dodgy streets. Hiza kashira. It means kneecap, by the way. You know, you're hitting those dodgy streets, you might you better be worried about your kneecaps. Yabo. Yabo is related too. It's vulgar or unrefined. We'll just go with unrefined. Yabo. Ura, get kicked in the backside. This is backside. It's really not that type of backside. It's more like out back, but fine. Sentaku, make a choice, a selection. All right, gotta select your Valentine's.
Sentaku.
This is selection. Do you think that people telling you it's your personality behavior that holds you back, not your physical appearance, is better than the other way around? You have to choose between the two? I don't know. Which one do you think is harder for you personally? Your physical appearance or your personality and behavior? Because earnestly, when it comes to the better way around, for me, like if you're thinking about it, it's whichever one's harder for the person you're asking. And then like the person you're interested in. So since I'm not particularly interested in any person, I'm kind of agnostic to this. However, when it comes to if we're gonna do this like objectively, observationally, it would probably be physical. A physical appearance. If I were to be agnostic to my own feelings and take on a more objective role, a physical appearance would be in the United States. It would be physical appearance, especially for males. And you might be thinking, wait, I thought there was this whole female thing. Like right now, there's kind of a leveling trend, and one of the things is physical appearance is prominent. The trend in physical appearance is incredibly prominent. It's almost hyper emphasized now. Personality and behavior requires nuances that skills don't perpetuate anymore. So when you're thinking about like, so in a way, the hard thing is to do something about behavior and personality. Not because it's hard from the sake of it's objectively hard, it's less practiced. So what can appear easy is the one that's difficult to master. Physical appearance. So online, or like looking at the trends, the more time, right? To me, this is how I think about it. The more time people are fixated on something, the less room for tolerance. That's kind of like perfectionism. And for me, that would be physical appearance right now. So a physical appearance comes easier because there's more time fixated on it. So because of that, there's less room for tolerance. So if I were to, if you were to ask me, what do I think would be better? It would probably be being physically appealing than personality and behavior. Largely due to if I were to take what is most fixated in reality right now, personally. It might not be true in the future or in the past or cultural differences, but for the landscape that I am typically involved in, the fixation is on appearance. Because of that fixation, it typically means there's less room for tolerance. So the distance between ugly or like unattractive, like friend zone material, to like attractive is like a really small margin. And yet to get that small margin is very difficult because there's lots of examples of it. Right? You're constantly blasted in the face for that. Meanwhile, when you have personality and behavior, this is niche. So when it's niche, there's a lot of range. Like the range is big. So you can circumvent that by demonstrating your eccentricity. And that can become charming. So there's lots of ways to be charming that isn't low tolerance or small ranged. There's a larger range. So the idea is that if someone says it's your personality that's holding you back, it could also be another person could tell you it's the personality that shines. In physical appearance, there's less range for that. So when someone says you're physically attractive, you are more likely to get that over time. That's my thought process. This is my thought process. So you have spuriousness working to your advantage. So like there's a chance you can, spin. There are more odds of winning on personality and behavior because it's all over the place. It's like people don't know because they don't discover it, they don't fixate it on it and whatnot. So you can have very lows but you can also have very highs. Physical appearance is a constant. It's often constant. There's uniformed standards, basically. Uniform standards, right? Is this guy's delt too big? Is this guy's, dad bod too big? There's less tolerance because there's more consistency in exposure. So that's kind of my way of evaluating which is better, the other way around, or I would take it from a human exposure and what their response is. I think you can get away with highlighting and elevating your personality without necessarily changing it. Because if you're able to highlight it, it can be a charming effect because there's no standardization. Like, what is considered a good personality? Right now, like, try to characterize it very confidently. It would be very difficult for me. However, when you think about the exposure to physical appearance, like health, appearance of fitness, athletes, it's very high, it's low in range, it has a low tolerance, but it's also consistent. So achieving that is if you have that, it gives you consistent results. Probably. Behavior, if you think you have a good personality, that doesn't guarantee that someone's going to tell you, oh yeah, your personality is the most shining thing. You can turn someone off, and then you can absolutely, like, you might be thinking, wasn't this always the case? No, not for all cultures. Right? If we use Japan as an example, or even my upbringing as Chinese person, personality is probably arguably more consistent than appearance for quite a long time. And then it's kind of a little bit progressive. So being progressive in Japan, for example, and in China is that looks is also important, but looks had often been secondary to success. Work ethic, security, title, legacy, parents, right? So those things have become secondary. However, since they're in their line, becoming more progressive is the other way around. In my opinion, in the United States, or like some westernized things, prioritizing personality and behavior and things like that it's still a bit more progressive. It involves what's considered, relatively speaking, progressive behavior. So if I sit there and this girl talks about her, we're gonna use like gender roles for this to illustrate social norms. I can sit there and listen to this girl talk about all the things that are bugging her for the last 5 hours, and then we would end our hangout and stuff, and it's like, thanks, you're a really good friend. Because inherently the relative thing is attraction is often more born out of physical appearance. That is what they practice. You could say, oh, well, there's genetics involved. It's like, yeah, there's also genetics involved. You can throw in genetics, right? Some argue that personality and behavior is also genetically selected as well. So, it's all of it. But if I had to take a gamble, it would be physical appearance, at least in a Western sense. Not so much personality and behavior. I don't think this changed that much dramatically. When I was younger, most of my friends were female. Like most of the people that I hang out with were female. And like, if you're thinking about which conversation I have more often, it's with the mother of the family, not the father. Although, without a doubt, the ones that have loving parents both their parents are awesome. They're like, they kind of bank off each other, but you can kind of see like which family has like traditional patriarchal like things. Like you can see that sometimes the father like rolls their eyes when the mother starts talking about something, and then the you can notice these things. And I would approach them very similarly. Like I would talk to the father in that classical gender role, and it does deal a lot with the physical appearance or the outward appearance, and then versus like the behavioral things. But just because you desire those things, like it would be nice to have like a good personality or something, it's hard to ignore how much more weighted the physical appearance is. But whether you like to hear that or not, I'm trying to be as realistic as I can be. Physical appearance still becomes the most obvious thing that someone will observe. And I'm not talking about specifically being like butched or jacked or something. Having a good smile, smiling with your eyes, big bright eyes, right? You don't look sleepy all the time. There's a lot of things that go into physical appearance that simply isn't simply I bench 250 or something like that, right? The ability to raise your child, right? Having healthy eating habits, right? You're not about to keel over with like have a heart attack all of a sudden from your diet. Those things do contribute to physical appearance. So behavior is still somewhat tied to both of them, right? When you see someone who's like moderately built, have like, let's say 25% body fat, 20 to 25%, it means this person likes to eat but also maintain a healthy mid weight. They have sufficient flexibility. They're not like hammering at the gym all day. All those do tell you a little bit about the person's behavior as well. If you're like looking at someone who's like 5% body fat lean, very particular person. So if I had to do my normal thing, both are important. They tell you about each. Like when you look at a person's physical appearance, it does tell you a bit about their personality and their behavior. The question is, how consistent is that? It's not as consistent as looking at physical appearance and like physical appearance sake, like physical appearance for performance sake. It's that relationship is far more accurate than trying to ascertain, but you'll still do it because it's informative. Looking at a person's physical appearance and inferring their personality and their behavior. So like, what do I look like? If someone saw me outside, I look like a runner. That's what I look like. I'm largely, my arms are like wet noodles. My calves are kind of like wet noodles, despite what runners may look like. And I'm kind of like skinny fat in a way. So I look more like a runner. So whenever someone looks at their physical appearance, it's like, well, at least that person might have good heart health in their run or something like that, right? It's interesting. If you were to ask the question, you would say the former, and you cringe typing this, but you don't know how best to phrase it. But you think you're the former. It has all the roadblocks, and that you wouldn't have that thought exist. I see. You could tell. Okay. If I am in the former as I think I am, you've got to capitalize quick because the widow's peak is running back by the minute. There are air treatments. Like you could have, I don't know what it's like in the UK, but there are like, you know, routine procedures for hair things. The main reason you think of yourself like that is because you can remember many instances where your initial interaction with new people had an equal or even even you being up power dynamics, then over time there's a clear drastic switch after they observe you. Yeah. So when you talk about consistency, right? Here's the double edge, right? Something that's consistent doesn't require maintenance. And what I mean by that is when you're physically attractive, right? Once you get through the door of physical attractiveness, there's a what is the more than 50% after? Is it the physical attractiveness? It's probably your behavior and personality. And largely due to the nature that when we think about how negativity works, the most salient thing over the lifespan of a relationship is how consistently not negative it is. So whenever there's negative things, where do most of the negative things come from? It comes from one of the most inconsistent sources that you're using for selection. You select it based on physicality. So then this leaves this as the can of worms, right? And then when people select on physicality, you would also make a presumption that this is secondary. This is something that they have less experience with. So it might not even be just you. It's both. We have to remember that a relationship is the combined experience, right? We're talking about the roles of both. So you have to be up for that. When, like, in my opinion, when someone says, "Oh, you look really nice," it's like, what do you think of my personality? And then that person will say, "I think you look really nice too. May I tell you something about what I see in your personality?" Because eventually you're going to have to practice both. Like, I mean, at least in my opinion, there are not quite a lot of people who stand the test of time where they are only interested in part of the person and then just choose to ignore the rest of the person. Like, yeah, who cares if their personality is bad or not? Their physical appearance makes up for it. So inevitably, right, you will have to explore both. And it's not specifically to the detriment of one person or the other person. It's both. Someone who is constantly relying on physical appearance is also someone who's inexperienced with learning about personality and behavior. And if you yourself are going out to interact based on physical appearance, the two of you can find reason to work on each other's personality and behavior, like talk it out, right? Because both of you could share empathy in exploring each other's personality and behavior due to inexperience, as opposed to letting it happen and then responding to it. At least that's kind of, I'm not a therapist, by the way, and I'm not a marriage counselor or anything like that. However, I would probably say that's probably the first thing they do, which is you start talking about the things each other have not communicated, because that would probably be the thing that they're both inexperienced in. As in, one person communicates a specific way which is not analogous to another person's communication skills. So then at some point they have to talk to each other in order to find the handshake. If it was physical appearance, then you would say things like, "Oh, okay, let's both go to the gym. The gym's good. Like, do that," right? But when it comes to personalities and behavior, if it was selected based on physical attraction in the first place, you're not expecting someone to have more experience in personality and behavior distinction. So whenever someone tells you, which now you can use this as an example. Does this person talk about physical appearance a lot? If they do, and they tell you your personality is holding you back, what is the person's weight in that advice? I talk about this when it comes to learning Japanese. When someone comes to me and say, "Oh yeah, translational methods are awful in Japanese," and I'm like, "Oh okay, can you tell me what makes you think that?" And if they say like, "Well, most people say this," I'm like, "What do you think about it? Have you tried to do this, or have you even looked at the people that made it work? Or are you telling me that there are no people in the world that use the translational method to learn Japanese?" If that's true, then I'll take your word for it. But if you have personal experience, I think that's the most valuable thing, because you're giving me advice right now. So if you have no experience with something and you avoided something entirely based on the experience of others, then how can I take your advice at all if you have no experience in it? Relationships, in my opinion, are somewhat analogous to that. And you can get ahead of it, in my opinion, by addressing the elephant in the room. It's like, hey, Missy, you look really attractive. And I imagine I look pretty attractive to you as well. But I look around and I look at relationships, and there's the whole idea of we have to live together, right? I don't know how to do this. And the odds are the other person might not also, right? But the idea here is you're using it as a way to understand that the two of you will have to work on it. And working on things together is far more successful when it comes to behavior and personality than saying, "Oh, you have a problem. I don't. So I'm sorry. It's your problem, not my problem." It's like, I don't think that person understands that it's also their problem. Right? That's kind of the idea. Physical, I think it's one of those double standards. Physical is like, you look at the person, it's like, oh, okay. There are some nuances to physical appearance, like what that person's able to do by appearing that way. Like if someone's really big, you don't know if they're flexible. So there's those kind of things that could happen. Or like someone's really big, you don't know if they have knee problems, right? There is some underlying nuance in physical appearance, but I think it's it's far more consistent than the elephant in the room. The reverse is still true, by the way. There are people with wonderful, beautiful personalities, and they met based on personalities. However, they neglect their physical appearance. So what happens then? They are really tired. They aren't healthy enough to raise children. They're not healthy enough to be there for their partners. So the opposite is very well true as well. However, the reason why I said physical appearance is because it happens, when it gets to that stage, it happens less than happens less often than the other way around. For now. In the future, it could be, oh yeah, everyone selects, in the future it could change. Everyone selects based on personality. Well then, what are we going to have? We're going to have problems with things tying to physical appearance, because physical appearance deal with people's health. So yes, you could have all the great personality in the world, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't go running every once in a while so you can stay alive and protect your heart and raise children. I say this because I'm 40 now, or like I'm almost 40, right? And the people that I'm with, they have wonderful personalities. They're really loving, compassionate, almost like somewhat progressive. They're very progressive as like father figures, but their health is really concerning, right? So oftentimes the thing that I usually talk to them is they would say things like, yeah, well, like I've been meaning to get to the gym, like my cholesterol's off the charts, and but work is, you gotta work long hours, there's not enough time. And the idea is like, you gotta get to the gym sometime. You want to live long, right? You want to live long. Like they all often talk about how much they like to hang out with their child, like their daughter and whatnot, and be there for their children. It's like that's also the same as getting into a gym, like going for those walks. Gotta find a way to like it when your daughter like grows a little bit older. Maybe you guys can go for a walk, go walk the dog together or something, right? Because personality and behavior, like personality, which is tied to behavior, sometimes doesn't necessarily translate to physical appearance. And but the times it does, it also means that if you appear unhealthy, there's not a lot of personality quirks or behavior that can compensate for your lack of health, right? So nice guys, they don't like nice people, compassionate people, they don't necessarily live very long. Like if you're predominant in one, like for example, you can meet comedians, funny people a lot of times, and this is such a unfortunate coincidence, but when you think about funny, there's a lot of correlations. These are correlations, so take it with a grain of salt. People who are funny often have a trade-off. People who are funny often has a trade-off in physical appearance, right? And what makes them funny requires time. What makes them physically appear healthy and whatnot as well, it also takes time. So trying to find a balance between these things are something that humans may not like to do. If they think they're funny, they might double down on being funny. But how many times have you heard where someone's very funny, but turns out they're very unhealthy in other ways, right? Like be it their own insecurities and whatnot. So there is a trade-off, and these are related. So I wouldn't necessarily make them like compete with each other. They're both of these, like personality and behavior, are two sides of the same coin. They're related. So yes, try to work on your personality and communicate your beauty and your inner beauty and whatnot, as well as your physical appearance. So someone who is somewhat kept, right? Like people often comment about my hair going really crazy, and usually I'm very low maintenance, so oftentimes when my hair gets very long, I look like I'm always in chaos when my hair goes crazy. So I take some measures to keep my hair down, right? And then I don't want to appear like skinny fat, so I still do pull-ups, push-ups and dips. I mean, there's quite a lot of people who have great personalities who can't do any of those things, right? Or like run a 10K or something like that. Like if anyone wants to run 10K, we could just go. We can do it right now. They want it. I can just lace up and go and run a 10K. When I still was working on my personality and whatnot, I didn't. It took me like in my mid-20s to not neglect my physical health as well. Like I was a rail, very, very, very thin rail. It's kind of like I don't know if it's fortunate or not. At least if I had to, based on your description protocol, at least that's something you might be able to work on. If you hear me out here, if you're like getting some consistent feedback and stuff, maybe that can be reassuring to know that you kind of know what it is. Oftentimes it's very daunting whenever you get some feedback, and then when you go to do something, it like does the opposite. Like not knowing at least a general idea of what you can work on and whatnot. if I had to use an analogy or anecdote, it's like some people who approach me and they say, why does everyone lie to me? And I'm like, that's a lot of type of people. Can you elaborate? Like, are you able to elaborate a little bit? Like, why does everyone say, like, hold their truths from me? And I'm like, I still don't understand how that's possible. If everyone's doing that, there's got to be some really nitpicky consistency between all of them. Because if there's a lot of different people doing the same thing to you, there are very few things that are common to a lot of different people. So that can be very helpful if you're able to narrow it down. It's far, far harder. And this is why I have a problem with statistics. How people view statistics. When you say everyone tells me this, my assumption is that this is a large sample. If it's a large sample, oftentimes that leads to information that is very actionable. But most of the time, when people say everyone, they're talking about like an end of 2. And the thing about end of 2 is that's a small sample, right? And that means you can explain it way too many ways. And that's kind of how I feel when people are talking to me about these things. And when I mean people, I mean like hundreds. We're in the neighborhood of hundreds of people yearly. My interactions with hundreds of people anyways. And then maybe like tens in a more in-depth way. However, the ones when they're talking about it's like, oh yeah, everyone in my class is doing well, for example. I'm like, are you sure? Because as far as I know, your grades are probably relative. So at least half your class isn't doing well relatively, and then half your class is doing well, right? If they wanted to do a objective thing, unless it's not based on a relative grading scale, then you could say, well, if everyone's doing well, then everyone has to have a better grade than you, right? And usually what it comes down to is they notice that there are 2 out of the 30 who they don't measure, so it's either 2 out of 2, and that's confirmation bias on statistics. They saw 2 people, they talked to 2 people, and those 2 people are doing better than them, and therefore everyone in their class is doing better. That's kind of modern statistics. That's like the modern way of arguments in NetSpeak. When you're on the online, that's how it works. So in my opinion, it's probably both. Proko. Might as well spin your wheels and then give it another shot, right? Hopefully something works out and you find something that's consistent that you can work with.
来る
And I'm not saying you're saying everyone. It's nice that to talk to someone who doesn't like generalize every confirmation that they have. It's nice and refreshing. However, it's also the thing that I don't highlight too much because my main focus is to try to communicate through confirmation bias. It's so difficult to communicate otherwise if you're not used to interpreting what the way people speak. When someone says everyone, they mean everyone they know and only the things they observe. So the first couple questions you would ask is what are the things they're avoiding, and what are the things they choose not to notice or measure. And that's kind of where I start, right? Like I asked them, okay, so everyone in your class, do you know of anybody that has a lower grade than you? What are they doing? And how do you think, did you ask them if they think they're doing well in the class or not? Right? The null hypothesis test, right? Talked about this quite a bit. How do you, it's not the antithesis of confirmation bias, like it, but it does help. It does help challenge oneself against confirmation bias, which is to use that confirmation bias, but for the opposite. So when someone tells you, like, if you are under the impression 3 people told you your personality is holding you back, all right, and if you believe that your personality is holding you back, then challenge it. Is like, if you believe your personality is not holding you back, then you would try to support the idea that it is. If you think it's your personality that's holding you back, then use your personality as the selection to see if it is holding you back. So you would want to seek supporting, or like the other way around, like you will use your physical appearance, right? If you believe it's your personality, and you would see if it is where your personality is where it's failing to support the null hypothesis. So that's my indirect way. So whenever someone asks me, oh yeah, I pretty much just suck at math. Okay, what if you're good at math? Can you tell me all the evidence that you can collect that tells me you are good at math? If the evidence is like 0, then all right, I'm more likely to believe you. But you actually have to try to look for those things, right? That's the idea. You have to actually test and try to look for those things before saying it. You're looking for evidence that you didn't focus on. Like when someone says, oh, I suck at life, okay? What are the evidence that you have that makes you good at life? And doing that exercise allows you to look at the things you might not look at, which is not for the sake of proving the hypotheses wrong or right. The exercise I'm focusing on is getting someone to think about all the things that they have to take into consideration. Because if you're not taking all the things into consideration, it doesn't matter if someone tells you the truth or they're right or wrong. You have no way of working with it. You have no way of like, okay, someone tells you have a personality problem. What does that mean? Like, you weren't focused on it at first, so what do you do now? And there's no way another stranger can answer it because it's your experiment, right? It's between you and that person. It's the vicarious nature. So you're kind of left to your own devices. So generally speaking, null hypothesis testing can help. I call it null hypothesis testing, but you can call it whatever you want. Just thinking the opposite, right? You're trying to argue and counter argue. And what happens is you're putting yourself in their shoes in order to understand if their advice is relevant. If you can understand their advice, you're able to use it. If you can't understand their advice and you disagree with them, then there's no chance that advice is useful. At least there's a very rare chance that advice is useful. And then if you do it that way and you're testing random things, it might as well just be luck. Because what you're testing may not even be related. You're testing luck in determining whether you understood that person without actually understanding them. The very nature of getting a criticism that tells you nothing about the problem that they have with you is the very nature that you really don't understand what they're trying to say, and therefore you shouldn't even take their advice, because if you don't understand what they're saying, how is it advice? That's kind of what the internet is like. However, it is also true when you have friends as well, to varying degrees, right? How well you know each other, how relevant their experience is, it's something that needs to be taken into account.
Tsuba.
What time is it? All right. Okay.
観光する
Not professional advice, by the way, disclaimer, right? Exercise in logic, or I'm merely pointing out logical things that I would consider. At least I think they're logical.
Haigan.
Okay. Power dynamic is very interesting. I don't think I've ever considered myself to have any form of power. So talk about power dynamics. That is definitely something that I'm not too great with.
宣言
And I generally don't know how one measures power dynamic. Uh-oh. This is armor. Or arms. Oh, please.
Sochi.
Or armed. Oh no, equipment.
抑圧
No. Ura.
裏通り
Yo, what? Kotonaru.
異なる
委託 股関節
Uh-oh. 装い。
装い
装い。 Okay.
膝、
一緒。家賃。
無糖、噂、総額、
Sorry, my when I stop talking after a while, my all that like vocal fatigue just comes back a lot. We're just kind of
抑止、
trying to be a little bit more conservative. Herikutsu.
へりくつ、
Herik. Mm. What? Ow, that kind of hurt my voice there.
併合、灰、受託、
宣伝。
Oh, 裏切り。
裏切り、
Yo, what?
暖房。夕刊。
Evening. Evening. Oh,
奥深い、
Upukai.
垂らす。著者。意義。
意義、意義。That's kind of a weird one.
送る、
変換。筋肉。
託す、妊婦、尊い、
Okay, hold up. Um. Uh. Like noble? Okay.
異常
How do we different condition this? Yo. Different situation. It's not no. Like. Abnormality. Okay.
著作
Saku.
還元
ね。
肺
肺
病
病。
尊敬
ああ。Can we just respect? Oh, okay, it's fine. So it's okay. Whoops,
書
that's not okay.
扱う
使う。ん Heck.
描写
描写。
ふさ
うさ。Excuse me. 円
円盤
盤。円盤。What are you? Oops. You. Oh, a disc with a K. Honestly, I'm not entirely sure what's the difference between. Oh, hold up. Disc versus disc. Disc both refers to flat circular objects and are often used interchangeably, but generally, disc is referred in American English and for magnetic computer storage hard disks, while disc is used in British English and for optical audio or video CD. Interesting. In the same exercise, I have an example of disc with a C and disc with a K. Just English things.
へ
Eh. Kind of funny because it's flatulence.
描画
Yoga. What? Oh,
賃貸
Chintai. Jujitsu? Oh no, Jujitsu?
忠実
Jujitsu wa yai. Oh, Mado.
窓
妊娠する
否定
で
傾向変装
雑誌
Yo, what? お、よいしょ。I'm gonna go with oh no. Wait.
皇族。
抑制。
抑制。
長官。股間。
必需品。
必需品。Okay.
帰って。一人称。
You're going to head off now. Best of luck with your studies. Thanks. Okay. Good luck, good luck. It was a pleasure as usual. I'll definitely give you my thoughts about this person at a later time. It'll be an interesting study.
皇室。逃亡。
逃げる。
Yo, what? Like a company plus like there's definitely like the tunnel. So like oh no, like no, that sounds rife with Omo? Omo no.
伴う。奥底。
奥底。
灰皿。
盛る。
Oh wait. Not like to pile up. Oh, okay.
異常。
裏切る。
はい。
Oh. What? Oh.
同伴する。
Oops.
歌唱。
歌唱。
裏口。生還。
Oh.
緩む。
Oh, yurumu. Ah. Sometimes I say uru instead of yuru.
演奏。
Yo, what?
武装。
傾く。 需要。 月間。
Oh.
天皇。
No.
秘訣。 基盤。
奥さん。
よろしい。
灰色。
敬語。
Oh, that's honorific. Okay, okay. Dang you! Hang on. It's not that one. I can only think of no. Yeah. Hold up. Is it? Oh no. Oh no. Why is a problem?
却下。
Akka. Kyapka. The heck?
服装。
金儲け。
番
Ban. We're getting there. We're getting there.
皇
皇太
太子
子。Eh? Oh no. 著しい。著しい。著しい。
著しい
著しい。
忠告
告。
砂糖
日韓いや緩やか
筋
はい。Oh, my T.
対象
My keyboard T didn't register. What? Hold up. What is that? I'm gonna say
垂直
垂直。
異性内緒
儲ける。うん。
窓口
What the heck? Oh. 窓口。
書く
ゆるい
ゆるい。
致命的
Oh, not fetal. Fatal. Eh?
いたす
す
奥
く
加藤
と Alright, well, we did it. Oh, that is a push if I ever seen one. Alright. We have a leap day tomorrow to catch up, so no worries. We'll do our Hanza Hero lessons and then just leave the reviews for the next day. And then we gotta get into our P5X Valentine's Day update. Let's go over these. Kabam, bag, Iki, disc, Ka, Chu, Ju. demand. Age. Yodel. Send regards. Good. Spin. Eat. Dodge. Neen pregnant. Jean pregnant. Chi. Do. On. Edition. Soul. Play music. On. Accompany. It. Join. Lean. Aku. Contrary. Oku. Or ok. Wife. Far side. Interior. Yo. Consider. And suspend. Ball cluster. Atsuka. Handle. Yoku. Suppress. Daku. Select. Yo. Draw. An. Gray. Show. Title. Show. Board. Yuru. Loose. Aku. Unsigned. Why? Bribe. No. Bribe. Zo. Presence. Or escape. On. Send back. Visa. Ni. Alright. That's a wrap for our WaniKani today. If you're gonna watch this later, arigatou gozaimasu. So as always, feel free to follow along, pick up WaniKani for yourself, give it a go. You're more than welcome. Come on by, yap a little, chat, right? And yeah, so until next time, minasan mata ne. Mite kurete arigato. Thanks for watching. See you guys next time. I'm gonna get up, walk around, take a quick bathroom break, and I will be back for Hanzahiro. Thank you, thank you.